All right, so our little fuel tank here is almost complete in that we still need to make a way to hang this thing from our top bar here. And that is today's episode. And what I want to do is hang the tank from the top of the tank so there'll be no supports on the bottom of the tank. To do that, we need some sort of straps or brackets, and I'm thinking brackets. My plan for these brackets involves some 14 gauge sheet metal, some 1/8 inch, 1 inch wide flat stock, some little rubber grommets here, and some various nuts and bolts. And the top tube on our frame here is 1.5 inch in diameter, which I happen to have an extra piece of right here, and this is where the story of our brace begins. Because it's off of this tube that our brace is born. And so to get to that brace, we need to start with the template. And now, poster board comes into our story in this little square. And I use this square to help measure out, give me some rough dimensions here for our template. And if I can get one template done, that's all I need. And then from there, I can use that template over and over again to make all the braces I want. First, let's get the diameter of this tube on here by putting the actual tube on to our template, and then let our imagination take wing. And then I end up with this guy here, which is much smaller than I had been picturing in my head. And now this center part was going to be used for that 1/4 inch sheet metal, but I'm thinking we don't even need that. This is such a small space there. All right, so once again, we're changing plans midstream as we go along. That's pretty standard around here. So let's cut some metal. All right, so now we got a couple friends here. One of them is a little bit longer than the other one, and this is our bottom one. And you can see I've got it marked right there, the sort of center, and that's where we're gonna have a hole to bolt to that fuel tank. It's going to reside right there. So I'm gonna set this aside for right now. I'm gonna work on this shorter one because we wanna put a little bend in here. I could cut it into 2 pieces and weld it at an angle, but I'm gonna try and bend the angle on here and in theory make my fabrication simpler. To do that, figure out where exactly I'm gonna bend it. Go into my little drawing, I'm measuring out the distance here before the bend, and it's like 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch, man. Okay, so let's see if we can make 1/2 inch come to life. I'm gonna mark 1/2 inch on here. We'll see how close we can get. All right, I've marked 1/2 inch on there. I'm gonna put it in my vise, which is conveniently right here next to me. And with it in the vise, then I'm gonna sort of set this on that line. I put this in here about at that line. Might move it up just slightly above the teeth of the vise. And then we're gonna start bending this thing over. But before I do that, going back to my little sketch here, I need to find the angle so I can have something to aim for here. The angle I'm looking for is approximately, and that gives me, it gives me 120. But this gives me an idea. I can sort of look at it like this and go, oh yeah, that's about where I want to be, you know. That's pretty good right there. So about 10 whacks. And then you end up with this guy. Compared to our template, you can kind of see how this lines up. That's pretty darn good, man. So that's the idea of that. And then we'll have this other guy on the bottom. And now you can kind of see what I'm going for here. We'll drill a hole on this end here. We'll bolt it onto the tank right there. And this will go around our tube over on this side. And there'll be this little gap, this air gap right between. And I think this will be plenty strong for what we're trying to do to hold in a gas tank. And hopefully give it a little bit of like designy, sort of artsy look or feel, or convey something artsy to the bike. Next, I'm gonna drill a hole. All right, so to drill this hole, first I've measured it to the way I want it, and then we got a center punch here. I'm gonna mark the center of the hole where I want that to be, and then we're gonna whack it with a hammer. There's a little indent on our plates here, on a piece of metal, which we can then use to center the drill. And now I'm going to take it to the drill press and drill a little hole through there, and then Texas Chica!
I like how you say that. Is there some chick that just walked down the street and not the person that's been sharing your bed for 16 years?
Texas Chica!
Alright, there we are. Now we've got this beautiful little hole. Look at the edges are just beveled just a little bit. So professional looking.
Now this guy goes on here like that. And that is pretty much our entire brace. Let's go try it out on the bike. Alright, so here it is. Should go on here. Something like this. So now I just need to make like 4 more of these for the gas tank, and then 4 more for the other little storage compartment that we have yet to make. Alright, so in order to weld these things up, I've welded up one here so far, that guy. And in order to get them welded up and all of them to be accurate, the same at least, I've got this is our pipe that we looked at earlier. This is a 1.5 inch pipe. And then I've got 2 little stopping points welded on there. And I'm using that, plus my little clampy thing here, to hold these in place. Let me get one set up and I'll show you. And you can see how I'm backstopping these pieces onto those little spots along the tube. And this guy goes on top to help center everything down, and then just sandwich everything all together. And the result is this guy right here. Got everything clamped together, backstopped, we're good. Basically I'm just lining up these 2 joints right there based upon this mark right there. And then with all that stuff in alignment, I can weld it in. Alright, so now we've got all of our little brackets here almost finished. And if I were really good, I would have done this ahead of time, and before I welded everything together, I would have rounded the edges on this guy here. But now that I see them together, I'm like, it would be more professional if I rounded the edges. So I'm going to do that now. And the way I'm going to do that, I need a little template, whatever, to draw. I'm going to use this washer, stick that on the end here. Draw my edges around there, and then with the rounded edge marked, I'll go ahead and grind this stuff down, cut it, grind it, and it'll be done. Alright, I've gone ahead and cut this guy in half so that it more easily fits on here. I can manipulate it better the way I want it. There we go, got something like that. And there, we softened the edges on this thing, and now it looks a little bit more professional, a little bit more thought put into it. All right, so we've now got our beautiful brackets here, but how are we gonna get them on the bike? And how are we gonna do it so they're straight? Well, here's my contraption. We've got this brown thing here. If you recognize that, it is a bed frame. It's also angle iron. So I'm using that as a straight edge that I can clamp down on the bottom of the frame. And then it also runs on the top of the frame, and that creates a straight edge going up this vertical plane, straight edge. And then to go horizontal here, I've got 2 clamps. I've got 2 of my brackets. I got 1 bracket there, another bracket on the other side. Those are both clamped on here with these clamps, and onto this other straight edge here, which is a piece of 1x1 tubing. So that's straight there. And then in order to get this thing level, straight, horizontally the way we want, I've got the old square right here. I'm taking this square and I'm putting it along my vertical straight edge here, this bed frame piece, and then I'm sliding that up onto my horizontal straight edge piece here, making sure that those are both square with each other, and then that will ensure that this thing is straight, perpendicular to the rest of the frame. I'm gonna go ahead and tack it on the top there. Now let's see how this tank looks on here so far. Yeah, that might work. All right, so another problem I've encountered and solved already is that on the brackets here on the bottom, I want, in order to minimize vibration to the tank and everything, I want to put a little rubber grommet, a little rubber spacer sort of thing in here. And so I've got these I'm gonna put on here. It's about a quarter of an inch, or sorry, it's about 1/8 of an inch or so thick, a little rubber spacer. The way I found these, they didn't come in this form. They didn't come in this earthly form when I found them. They looked a lot like this when I found them. They were little grommets, but I cut out the middle part and now I have 2 little spacers, which is what I want. So yeah, I got these at a local hardware store. Cut them out with a little razor. Cut them out with a razor. And so let's do another one because I got 2, I need 4 for this gas tank. And this is a bit dangerous to do. You could easily cut yourself, so be careful. You've got the razor in there in between and just rub this thing around and try and move it back and forth just a little bit and move it until finally you get all the way through there. Another thing I ended up doing was that stick it in here, in my vise, clamp it down. So it's even more dangerous, and I can rub it in here, but I feel like I have a little bit more control this way. Oh my God, maybe not. Maybe it's a foolish belief I have more control, and the reality is much more sinister. But yeah, and then I can kind of rub it through here, and I'm being more cautious and I'm not trying to just jam this thing on there real quick. I'm sort of taking my time and rotating this thing. And if I had a brand new razor, it would probably help too. Probably make this job a lot safer. There we go. There's one little spacer. Alright, now I'm going to try putting the tank on here. Let's see if it looks alright. I want to say that it looks alright, but I don't really have a great perspective. I think it looks alright, dude. My next step is to braid some all thread onto the tank, and then we'll be able to bolt the actual tank up to the bike. That'll be awesome. Alright, so now I've got the width of that 1/2 inch pipe marked on my tank here. I'm going to try and center this onto the frame, align it with the bolt holes, all of that awesomeness, and then mark my bolt holes where those are supposed to be. Okay, let's pray that works. Alright, so here's our all thread, our threaded rod here. Here's a normal, standard 3/8 inch bolt. And here's the one I'd like to use on the tank, just because it's different, unusual, something you don't see all the time, which makes it look better. Which makes people go, oh, there was some thought put into what bolt we're going to use. I'm going to cut out my all thread. I'm trying to determine at this point how long my little pieces of all thread need to be in order to fit the bolts, the little grommets, the bracket, and a washer. So I guess to determine that, let's start threading things onto this washer, huh? Or onto this all thread. So if we do it something like this and then do an 1/8 inch or so beyond that to account for the bracket, that puts me down into here somewhere. Alright, so we've ended up with a little piece of threaded rod that is 7/8 of an inch long. Alright, so here's my setup on the tank, trying to get these threads on here. You'll see I've got a mark there where I marked the hole from the bracket, another mark over there. And I had similar marks over here, which these bolts are now covering. And I'm just sort of trying to hold them as straight as possible at 90 degrees off of the tank with these magnets. And then my plan is to go ahead and get a couple tacks, one on either side there. Then we'll test it on the bike and see how it shakes out. All right, so in the previous video on this gas tank, someone commented that I should have preheated that bung to sort of bring that up to temperature quicker, because the thicker metal needs more heat in order to come up to the same temperature as the thinner metal. The thinner metal heats up much faster. And so that differential is a problem when I'm trying to weld and not warp the thinner metal. So this time you also note that this is not exactly thin. So I'm gonna try and preheat this stuff this time and see how that goes. I'm gonna use propane gas here. And this is also coated, it's zinc coated, so heating this up is not really a great idea because that zinc can burn off, and when it burns off it'll create a gas that's basically toxic and bad for you. So I have plenty of ventilation here, that's why it's so noisy. I've got the fan going and the garage door open. Alright, so here we are, and that is not easy. That propane gas, this stuff, totally inadequate. And really I should clean off all the zinc stuff first, whether I soak it in vinegar or something for a couple days ahead of time, because you just end up burning it off anyways, no matter what, and it is dangerous, man. So I'm gonna try and wire wheel this stuff off as best I can. So I had to reposition these brackets right here, so I broke off the tacks on there that we had put on. I bolted them to the tank and then re-welded them back onto the frame there. And then I've also got this strap on here holding everything in place, and I'm gonna go ahead and remark these holes for the ones in the back as well. All right, now I'm gonna take the tank off and try and put the other bolts on here on the back. And to preheat this guy, what I'm doing is I'm taking my TIG torch here, and before I set the bolt onto the tank, I'm heating the bottom of it just with the actual electrode, just heating it up so it's nice and red and hot. And then I'll take my pliers here and move it to the tank. All right, they're on. We've got all 4 of these guys on to the tank. So, and they actually line up with the brackets on the bike, so that's pretty cool. All right, then I'm gonna chase the threads here on these last 2 bolts that we welded on here, because those are the ones that we used the wire brush on, and we kind of messed up the threads just a little bit, so the bolts don't really want to thread on. So I'll go ahead and clean those up a bit, and we should be in business. Much better, much better. Now there was quite a bit of finagling and adjusting and even some banging to get these things to line up. It's really, they're not like machine perfect. This is really much more of an art that I'm doing here. And knock those off and re-weld them on so that it'll be that much better of a fit. So my original concept here involved these little rubber spacers to serve as sort of vibration dampers. I'm going to stick these guys on here and we're going to see if this makes any sense at all. Alright, you can see, if you take a look at this bolt here, this is a normal 6-sided bolt on there. Comparing that bolt to this bolt, what do you think? I think the old style square bolt is a little bit more fun and certainly more retro looking, and just something you don't quite expect on a bike, so I think it's kind of interesting. But let me know in the comments, man, what do you think? I'm tempted to make my own spacers, find a piece of like aluminum rod or something that I can machine out a little washer, like a thick washer, so that this nut here sits right at the top of that bolt when you tighten everything down. But we'll see what I can get a hold of and how much they are and all that sort of stuff. And I'm a little in shock, to be honest, as I make this stuff, that I actually made it, that I've gotten it to this point, because it's like, can I do it? I don't know, but here it is. I guess I did it. It doesn't really sink in, you know? And I realize this is not like super fancy. It's pretty basic, you know, as far as tanks go, but for me, that's really good. If you remember back, if you ever watched the Goldwing tank build that I did, that took me like 40 hours, literally, just to modify an existing tank to weld one panel on. One panel. We did like 6 panels on this thing. And that, I did a horrible job of the welding on that. And I learned a lot, did a horrible job, spent a ton of time, and it wasn't nearly as nice as this. This is much better. This is a much
it's a little, not just a step, but a leap forward in terms of quality of the welds on this thing. So anyways, that's it for this week's video. Tank is mounted. We are very proud and that we've gotten this far. And next time we're gonna start working on this tank back here. I'm still going with the idea of having a hinged door, kind of like a glove box kind of thing. So almost making a glove box for the bike. And the door hinges down on the side there, and then you can access whatever's inside. And I'll probably do a door on both sides of the tank so you can easily get to one thing or another and slide the battery in and out or whatever. That's my thought at the moment. We'll see what actually happens. I still need to go to the metal store and get one of those sort of piano hinges that I can cut and fit on there. I think that's where I'm going on this. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Keep on wrenching on your own projects. That's it, man. See you next week.